So I'm Gloria Simmons, director of the Thatcher Gallery, and I'm really glad to see so many people here today. Welcome. Before I introduce Mike, I just want to say thank you to a few people. This gallery has a very small staff, and the people that work here work really hard. So I want to acknowledge Brianne Batara, who is a recent museum studies graduate, who really was instrumental in writing the texts and working with Mike and planning events. So thank you very much. And then I want to list off other students who helped as well: McKenna Paul, Rain Thomas, Corrine Ladner, Grace Hanford, and Delaney Gibbons. So we couldn't do it without you. And then I just want to say thank you, Mike, for coming to the gallery and bringing us this really fun, your energetic spirit in this really fun show that also makes us think. I really appreciate that. So Michael Arcega is an interdisciplinary artist working primarily in sculpture and installation that explores language, historic narratives, and unbalanced power dynamics. He has a BFA from San Francisco Art Institute and an MFA from Stanford. He's shown his work throughout the city and as well as in Hawaii, Houston, and New York. He currently lives in San Francisco and teaches at San Francisco State. And after this walkthrough, we'll be going over to Xavier Room in Fromm Hall for a conversation with Jenifer Wofford and Michael Arcega. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Gloria. Thanks for having me. This has been a really wonderful show to put together, and with your guidance, I'm really happy with how it turned out. So I've been trying to figure out how to kind of do the walkthrough in the space based on the context of this space and you guys. And I hadn't decided how that was going to happen, so I'm just going to freestyle it. So a lot, as the wall text says, I was born in the Philippines, and I grew up in this somewhat kind of magical world, I think. You know, there in the Philippines, it's rich, the folklore is really rich. There are spirits that will haunt you, hurt you, heal you. There are kind of albularios and hilots and folks who are healers, and also there are mangkukulams, there are those that curse. And then there's obviously the overlay of colonialism, where the kind of Catholic belief is pretty much the primary belief system. And so the other systems of beliefs are informal. You know, it operates similarly to how Santeria operates in other cultures, where it's within Catholicism, and it uses some of the language and the vernacular of Christianity, but it's more animistic and more pre-colonial. It's kind of the original belief system. And it's informal in that there is no proper structure. It changes depending on the albulario. Like certain hilots, certain albularios will have a way to heal someone, and somebody else will have a different way. So it's alive. And it is alive also in multiple ways, because not everything is colonized. So in a certain way, this type of structure is happening as a form of resistance to a power dynamic. And so I'm not an expert in, and there's not a real name for it. I'm not an expert in hunting and things, nor am I an expert in magical objects. I am a visual artist who likes anthropology and linguistics, and that is the place, this poetic place that I'm coming into this kind of system. So that's kind of the overlay of the exhibition and how I came starting to think about it. I wanted to open up with this piece. This piece is called Señorita, or Doña Señorita, and it's kind of like a veiled banana cluster. These are called señoritas. They're also known as apple bananas. The pyramidal structure and the vowels and wings all are imagery that comes from this informal belief system. And I've taken some of those things, and also the Virgin Mary, the Virgin is the primary, it's a matriarchal power structure. So it's really a kind of very opposite of the kind of Catholicism, especially in the Philippines. There's like women can't be priests, so things like that. So this binary is actually placed. So the bananas, there's 5 to symbolize the alphabets: A, I, E, O, U, and same as A, E, I, O, U, but with an X. And it's the vowels are they. I lose my recollection when I'm talking out loud, but there's each one means something different spiritually, but I see it as a kind of voice, an expression, and power and nutrition, the bananas. So this one is more of a homage. Like, I was raised mostly by women, and so I think like I'm familiar with being nourished by that power structure, that kind of matriarchal structure. And then so this piece next to it, this is more serious. This piece is called Pen 15 Club. And the Pen 15 Club is either an overcompensation wand or a fertility club. So I am part of the Pen 15 Club. It was written on my arm when I was a little kid, and I have participated in writing it on other people's arms. If you guys aren't familiar with it, ask the person laughing next to you. They'll be able to tell you this is not an uncommon club, but it is elusive. There's no, it's like similar to how like the practitioners of the said belief system. It's really informal. So yeah, I think I'll move on. Like I said, this is going to be freestyle. I'm still not currently. My membership lapsed. And so a good segue from here, from this obvious phallus, is this intimate little object called truck nut. It's a fertility talisman. The material is really important. It's made out of blue sticky tack putty, nail, and primer paint. I'll just read. This item is a spiritual antidote to the common truck nuts found in the rear of very large Nasariman transports, meant to display the operator's masculine virility and dominance. On the other hand, this truck nut heightens the owner's sensitivity, humorous charm, and wit that can lead to productive interactions. The truck nut is often displayed in the boudoir. This piece is kind of operating counter to that masculine expression of I have large testicles. I don't think I have to say that to you guys, but that's what this thing is expressing. And I actually really love the intimacy of it. It's super cute, it's blue. The color is really nice. Um, so, all right. So these are 3 baseball clubs. That's a fire bat. It's an incendiary device that can control a large group of people, like a mob or something. This is the Halo Maker. It's a tool that can be used to create halos or stars that circle around a cartoon head. And this is the headhunter's broom. It's similar to like how you would spiritually cleanse a room with sage. You would clean it up, but if you could also chase someone who's toxic from your space. These are objects that were kind of found and transformed. Let's keep moving around. Go this way. So over here, I guess some of you guys read the text Body Ritual Among the Nasarima. That is anthropological text that has informed my practice for the past several years. The Nasarima are a people who live in North America and are among you, not you. And they, as you read and as you find out, the Nasarima are Americans, and with odd kind of belief structures too. This piece here is called Dikuff, the Dikuff garment, and it's an anti-power costume for waiting. Slightly more serious in commentary. The orange jumpsuit is something that's worn by prisoners, and the emergency blanket typically is something you use when there's nothing else to keep you warm. So the whole piece is about a kind of desperation, about lack of power. When you wear that jumpsuit in a prison context, you are kind of marked, right, by this culture and many other cultures. If you are marked as a prisoner in the Philippines for drug use, currently you might be dead. There is something that reverberates beyond that. So the description of this is, it is said that the wearer of these items lose their luck. Worn together, as depicted here, can cause permanent emotional, psychological, and physical damage over time. Similar attires have led to extended trauma, often intergenerational. There's a lack of poetics, I think, in writing fucked over and over and over and over again. So someone gets fucked more than 100 times, front ways and back ways. I think that most of the people that get in prison are people of color and just have intergenerational trauma already that gets passed on even further. So it just keeps going and going and going. And I think it was a kind of meditation for me to write it as carefully and slowly, and then to bedazzle it backwards. Was kind of a way for me to kind of ponder those folks who are in these dire situations. Also, since this is casual, I'm being casual. Feel free to ask any questions, and if you want me to elaborate on certain things. We'll just move this way, and then into the cases. So as a counterpoint to the Dikuff garment, this is a suerte or iwas malas. It's a power cape for partial furry rainbow. So this cape draws luck and good omen to its wearer. It warms, protects, and opens opportunities. However, when worn in public, this garment can attract unsolicited caresses and amorous attention from animals. So, if you wear it, it jingles, there's a lot of stuff that lends itself to curiosity. Maybe a bird might want to take some shiny bits from you. It's kind of imbued with lucky charms, whether those charms are odd like a rabbit's foot. I've always wondered why that's lucky. But there are personal things in here that, like for instance, my daughter picks up sticks, and I made a trigram from the I Ching, which means heaven. So there's that. There's sticks that she collects. This is part of her baby blanket. But there are also some things like this needle that my wife accidentally stepped on. So there's some personal things in here. There's also like things like there's the Virgin Mary. There's a horseshoe. There's a ghost in here. Bats are lucky. What's that called? The four-leaf clover, and then there's also a little truck nut in there. Little tease, very nice. So that's this piece. Walking through. I'm just gonna touch on some highlights. This foot up here, this white object, is called my left foot, symbol of disbelief with Nasiriman stories. This object empowers the possessor by giving them the power to tell the truth from fiction. While caressing the foot's furry parts, the user can observe or read the message in question. Over time, they will be able to discern truth from false narratives. So I imagine the user of this object will hold the foot like this, and while somebody is telling them a story or a narrative, they will be able to tell whether that is truth or false. And I just imagine that would work really well. So in a kind of post-truth times, where one narrative, no matter how crazy that narrative is, can usually usurp a truthful, factual statement, which is mind-boggling to me. So in terms of how and what we need as to arm us, to empower us, to be able to discern truth from fiction, I think the saying "my left foot" is that, like calling bullshit. So I think about fake news. I think about call BS. Think about the Me Too movement. All of those things are calling bullshit, and we really need something like that. So in other ways too, these objects are a way for me as a maker to kind of contemplate some of the things that we're dealing with collectively. We'll go to this thing. This collection of kind of brick-like objects called batong bato. For alleviating boredom or items for throwing. The title translates to being bored as a rock and thrown rock. It's a double entendre. It literally means that, like, batong bato is like, I'm so bored as a rock. And then batong bato, like to take a rock and throw, is the other exact meaning of it. The double entendre suggests that these items can be used to build or end friendships. The brick-like form can be filled with a drink or flammable liquid, implying that one can escape boredom with a friend or make enemies. The agency lies with the user. This optional gasoline can turn this rock into, this brick into like a Molotov cocktail. So, in terms of like how an object can be used, in which direction, it really gives agency to the user of the object. If I fill it with whiskey, I could go use it as like a flask with a friend. That would kind of change the purpose of this object. Any questions?
Michael?
Yeah, yes.
So can these objects be found in all parts of the Philippines? So in the north, where the Ilocanos are, on the Big Island, where we have both sides and a couple sides of the island have different cultures, or
Yeah, it's actually, I am taking those objects as an inspiration. All of these objects are actually fiction, coming from a kind of using my poetic license as a visual artist. These are this is hand built, like I hand built these. So they're not found anywhere but here. Actually almost all of the objects here are native, I wouldn't say all, Native American objects. So so they can't be found in the Philippines.
so it's really language that you're talking about.
Yeah.
Translated into solid objects.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm taking the kind of how those objects in the Philippines are somehow transformed and empowered by like a shaman, a hilot or a albularyo. And I know different islands have different names for these healers. And I'm taking that as inspiration and using my kind of artistic license to imbue power on the objects. Yeah.
In the intro, it talked about how your work often deals though with the inequitable power relations. Can you talk is there something in terms of the objects you're talking about?
Yeah, sure. The belief structure that I'm referencing is operating in between the dominant religious structure of either Catholicism in the north or Islam in the south. But mostly, Catholicism is the main power structure. And the type of informal belief structures that healers use is operating underneath all that. So by taking that kind of ethos, I'm hoping to be able to use those strategies of empowerment on the work of these pieces. So that's kind of how I'm looking at it. Yeah. I wanted to open this case up and activate a few of the objects for the last few minutes. So I think Lori is going to help me open it. Let's just like this.
So you want to move this forward?
Yeah, you want to trade places?
Yes.
Alright. Oh yeah, this way. So you guys could come closer. We'll start with this, and while we're activating this, I'll just kind of pass around the different objects. So this is a kalabasa flask for tagay. The ceramic squash form is meant to be cradled with both hands, with the drinker's mouth around the top. They may partake in the elixir. Tagay is a form of social drinking where one receptacle is shared by an intimate group. The object is passed around in a circle. The communal exchange strengthens the bonds and deepens relationship. So you're invited to, if you are of age and willing, to take this object, take a sip, wipe, there's a cloth, wipe it, and pass it to the next person. It's whiskey. So which way should I? I'll do the first one.
Is there stuff in there?
Yeah.
Happy 21.
So I swear that way.
Jeremiah.
Jeremiah.
We're looking.
I'll hold on to the paddle. So the idea of tagay is you drink the drink until the entire thing is gone, and it's supposed to go around and around and around until it's gone. There's only one receptacle, so if you bogart that receptacle, you're holding up the entire process. So there's a pressure to share, and you do this over time throughout the day. So there's one object. This is a comfort object called 8008. You type it on your calculator, flip it upside down, and you know what it means. But you know, it's kind of like a squishy object. It's known to help ease stress of life. It's meant to be held near the chest and head. Experts believe that it signals a material soothing to the one who activates this item. They sometimes come as a pair. I'll let you start that. Just pass that around. This one is bula bula or bola bola. Bula bula is bubbles, bubble. Bola bola is ball. It's also bola bola, mangbobola. Like those are terms used to someone who lies. It's like a lie. I obviously am interested in wordplay and double meanings, double entendres. When activated, this contraption brings immediate joy, especially to children. It captures the breath of the user, and it makes it visible to others, bringing wonder and awe. So let's do it like this. You guys can't see it. I'm going to take this papaya form, pour it into this receptacle. Yeah. So while that's going around, we can close with this central piece. So this is called subliminal, liminal, luminal, or ignath ilpat. If you speak Nasariman, it's something similar to fancy spotlight. So this chandelier bestows power on anything placed under it. The longer the light shines on the item, the more cultural value and desire the object develops. It's chandeliers that on a previously floating table. So at one point, this table had a light where it was levitating over a walkway. It's now the kind of main structure to hold this interaction, this relationship, where the Spam can is bronzed, and Spam to a lot of Filipinos, a lot of folks around World War II in the Pacific got addicted to Spam, and I grew up eating Spam, and it had always carried this kind of prestige about it because it was tied to the U.S. military. The GIs had it, they were sick of it, they would trade it for local food, and local Filipinos liked it, and when you eat it, you are somehow connected to this superpower, right? Like America, like that is the prestige that Spam had. At least when I was growing up, I think it still carries that kind of prestige, maybe. But you know, folks in the Midwest are like, Spam, it's gross. But you know, it has that. I think it still has that kind of connection. But so we can watch it become fancier. So then it goes through while you drink that out of the calabasa. That's kind of it. That's it. I won't talk about other ones for time. Yeah. Thanks, you guys.
So you're welcome to stick around here. There's going to be a talk in Xavier Hall from Xavier Room from Hall.
Michael Arcega. I'm wearing my Unting tonight. When I bought this almost 10 years ago, I was just attracted to it as a piece of jewelry. But as I was reading the background for this tonight, Unting, our sources are basically things like amulets, of which all of these are. They're handmade, some are based on ivory, they're all silver, and each one of them says the artist put on love heals. Not a Filipino artist, but this is something that to me speaks to the anthropology of what these objects represent. Power, superstition, history, religion. So, you know, if you don't know where to focus tonight, you can look at my Unting here. These installations and conceptual pieces use ceramics, mixed media, and found objects to explore the indigenous Filipino practice of Unting. Merging fine objects, practices with merging fine arts practices with an anthropological sensibility. Arcega invites viewers to consider the power of belief and ordinary objects in our lives. Tonight we will enjoy a conversation between artist Michael Arcega and artist, curator, designer, performer, and USF professor Jenifer Wofford, who has just returned from Manila's Biennale. So, Professor Wofford, if you would do the rest.
Hi, so great that you're all here. I am here just to kind of talk about the format briefly, and of course then to reintroduce Mike to you and tell you things he hasn't told you yet about himself, or that Glory hasn't. Some of you already know, but the format is basically that Mike and I will be having a fairly informal chat for about half an hour, a little bit longer, after which point we are turning it over to you. So please get your questions ready for us, okay? Otherwise, we're just going to keep droning on up here. You may have heard the introduction to Mike earlier. If you did not, I'll just fill in a couple of other details about him. So Michael, or Mike, I call him Mike, was born in Manila on August 19th, the same day as me. And Manuel Quezon, president of the Philippines. And Bill Clinton, the other president. Okay. Anyway, so Mike was born in Manila. Him and his family immigrated when he was about 10 years old. And he spent his early years doing graffiti and b-boying, just a little bit, which sometimes he talks about, maybe you can ask him about, maybe not. He moved up to San Francisco to start the Art Institute, right? San Francisco Art Institute, and I think at that point, that is when his work sort of started really transforming. And I think it became very broadly interdisciplinary in its focus, primarily sculpture and installation. I think he's an artist that's always really thought, I think about ideas in the round, really thinking three-dimensionally in all times about what he's doing. And spatially, I guess is a better word to use. Some of the things you've already kind of learned from his talk earlier in terms of the way that his work does play with language or with culture, with history, with geopolitics. And so we'll probably tease out some of those themes a little bit further in our talk. What else do you not know about him? I think that some of the things you've already picked up on that we'll probably talk a little bit more about are, I think within that category of language, I think the way in which his work is often very subversive and playful. So for example, about 15 years ago, 14 or 15 years ago now,
He made an entire Spanish galleon ship in sort of an homage to the Acapulco Manila galleon trade, but he made it out of manila folders. You get it? Or that other time that he made this extraordinary sort of map out of Spam. Because what is maps spelled backwards? Yeah. So Mike is often sort of subverting and inverting language and meaning, and so that is sort of one of the hallmarks of what he does so extraordinarily well. He went to the Art Institute, as you may have just heard. So that was his Bachelor of Fine Arts. His Master's of Fine Arts was from Stanford. You may have heard of that. And he is currently an assistant professor at San Francisco State University, just down the road from us. Recent exhibitions here in the Bay Area have included projects at the Asian Art Museum. He had a solo project at the DeYoung Museum a few years ago. He's shown at Yerba Buena Center for the Arts, and a whole host of other museums across this country. So, Mike, let's have a talk. So I think the first word that I wrote down, Mike, in my list of questions was just if you could talk a little bit more about your relationship to play in your work, because I think that's a thing that as people are experiencing work for maybe the first time, it's not actually always immediately evident. Like, you're very deadpan about your approach to it, and how imagination works its way through language and process, and so I'm wondering if you could tease out for us how that operates for you in your work.
Sure. Hello. Well, first, before I go there, I want to thank you for such a really generous introduction all around. Thank you for having me. Thanks for being here. Some of my students, thanks for coming, even though you had to. So play has been really integral in my work. I think that just stems from not wanting to be bored, not wanting to make boring work, having a kind of internal dialogue where I know it's good if I giggle. You know, a lot of my work actually closes like that. Like I know that there's a seed in the piece if it makes me chuckle. It used to be like I would wake up in the middle of the night and I would literally be chuckling. That's kind of grown. Like, I haven't been dreaming about like pieces and jokes in a while, but it's important also to me to kind of counter the serious subjects in the work. Oftentimes, I'm thinking about large gaps in power dynamics. I'm thinking about colonialism. I'm thinking about oppression. I'm thinking about things that are, they hurt after a while. You think about, I'll start bringing up examples, but there's a lot of pain in the world, and I think that if one dwells in that, one becomes that, and in order to subvert that, I think playing and spinning it and flipping it and transforming it into something that's lighter and something that elevates instead of like depresses I think that's like really where that comes from, or another reason. Yeah.
I'm wondering if you can talk also about how that plays into your use of materials, but also language, in the way that you're often like reversing or inverting text, so that 8008 means something else, or a lot of your titles are reversed. Like, did any of you spell Nasirema backwards yet? Okay. Yes, so he has a whole project about the Nasirema. And then also just the choices you make in terms of materials, because you're a consummate craftsman. Like, you know how to build and make and weld and do all these things, but you also choose to work with unexpected materials.
Yeah, the language thing comes from being bilingual. It comes from growing up in a culture that's super corny. I mean, Filipinos are corny. Filipinos are superstitious. Filipinos are crafty. And I think that being raised among people who are like that, it just rubs off. And so, the bilingual thing, I usually open up lectures with use this word in a sentence jokes. It's say it. Use persuading in a sentence. So persuading with an accent can be used like, I went to my cousin's persuading anniversary, and it was very fun. So
You need practice.
what was that?
You need to practice.
I need to practice. Yeah. So that thing where the accent dissolves the language, especially the Filipino accent dissolving English, is an empowering thing. To be able to use the thing that growing up, immigrating as a 10-year-old, having an accent and being teased about it was rough. I got into a couple fights. I don't think my mom knows about it. My mom's here from LA. Because of that, you want to suppress the accent. And then later on in life, I realized that, that was a thing that made me different and made me interesting. That's something that happened in the Art Institute. So a lot of the language play comes from that. Materiality is, I think, a result of that kind of thinking where you take things and you flip it and you play around with it. You take spam, you flip it, you get maps. So all of those things are interesting to me, and that goes from this conceptual place into a material place. So how do you cut up? So I have to deal with spam because spam has to be maps. So how do you cut up spam? And when you cut it, it shrinks. And then, so how do you anticipate that shrink? And then, you put it in the oven so it warms it up. The material research is another component that fascinates me, and it carries on into my teaching actually. In that material isn't just a conceptual thing, but the physical materiality of objects has cultural, historical, personal significance that we can tweak just like language.
I guess continuing sort of along that vein, the other thing that's sort of bouncing around in my head is I was thinking a lot about, as we were walking through your show, about how thorough you are in your planning, but also how much space you actually allow yourself for just improvisation. That there were some forms where, not outing you here, I hope, but you were like, well, I'm not really sure what that thing's for yet. And I think that's actually something that many creative people struggle with, that comfort factor around that ambiguity sometimes. And I'm wondering if you can talk at all to how that works in your practice, when that part of your work that is deeply research-based and planning-based, and you get all your facts straight, but then there's also just these cockamamie things that happen as well.
Yeah, I still struggle with that. I don't know if I'm doing it right. And I, at a certain point, I think you just have to be you. And it's like, sorry, I don't know. I made it up. There's no real answer for that. And I think, I can intellectualize it and say that it's maybe akin to kind of improv, right? I can put it there. I can put it in a place where use artistic license. And sometimes it's good to not know. I like operating in a mental, emotional state of not knowing. I don't need the answers for everything. And I don't have the answers for everything. And that gray space is scary for some people. But it's a space that I like. It might have something to do with being bicultural, bilingual, and knowing that you exist in a spectrum and you're not a binary person. You swing back and forth. And so that ambiguity is something I get used to, being being comfortable with being out of balance.
The other thing I kept thinking through is that you're somebody who's creative on so many different levels. What is it for you about working in sculpture? Like, why do your ideas need to take these sort of spatial forms?
I think that the objecthood, the objectness of a thing is, I came in from painting, came in from graffiti and then into painting, and then I always added things to my paintings. And then eventually I was like, those things are more interesting than my paintings. And then it just became about the things, and then it became about materials, and it became about the significance of things. And sometimes, the thingness of it is just powerful as it is. Like the chandelier has a personal narrative. The chandelier in the show, it was from a friend who had mold poisoning in her house, and she needed to get rid of it. And I wanted to help, but to a certain capacity. I offered to buy it, and I have it. And then it was like, I could use that thing in the show. But it has this connection to our friend Susan. And it's like, and her shedding, and I think somehow that thing it already has a power. I'm not using it like that in the exhibition. I'm using it a thing that gives power to another thing. But yeah, I don't know, I think I'm just fascinated by the power of objects in a broad sense. I think culturally we have that innately.
Definitely the power aspect comes through so often in your work. And I'm not sure, I'm trying to rack my brain for which sculptors I think a friend of ours, or actually a friend of mine who's a sculptor, just sort of once told me, everything a sculptor makes is just a submarine. So that was kind of a profound thing, this idea that everything is just this intense, submerged vessel that's just carrying all this stuff. And I was actually thinking a lot about how, this idea of a vessel, it goes through so much of your work, whether it's, with the galleon ship or whether it's when you make the ark. So there's like a very physical ship-like vessel, or the Messerang baby boat. But then it's also, I think, concentrated down into these very small forms. All these things I think are also vessels of transference or of holding power or something. And so I think there's the vessel aspect of your work, and then there's also the totems, right? And kind of the same thing, but one is kind of holding something, the other kind of is this intense thing. And I'm wondering if you have any thoughts on those two.
Well, thanks for making those connections, because it's new to me. Like, seriously. So here's an example of something that's new and something that I didn't anticipate, and I'm loving that you have that insight. Thank you. The ships, those vessels. So there's a kind of duality in them, in that vessels move, and that just happened right here. But yeah, I never made that connection, because this work is some of it is so new. All the ceramic stuff is I've never shown it before. But the ship somehow, the boat, there's not one thing why I gravitate to it. I fancy myself as an explorer at some point, and maybe it's a metaphorical thing that I would like to be and aspire to be. But there's not a singular thing. I could probably list off reasons why I think they're interesting, but that would be boring.
Can we talk about Carlos?
Yeah.
So first, some of you have heard of Carlos Villa. Lori, a few of you. Who's heard of Carlos Villa? Yeah, that's right. So Carlos, I think in many ways would probably be why we're both sitting here. Certainly that's how I ended up first teaching at USF. And at very different stages, he was sort of informally a mentor of each of ours. So he was a Filipino-American artist and professor. He passed away March 23rd, 2013, so we're coming right up on the anniversary. But Carlos is somebody who had an extraordinary legacy here in the Bay Area. I think for just generations of folks of color, people who had activist persuasions to their work. And he was one of just a very small handful of just Filipino-American elders and mentors that some of us had. So, Mike, I'm wondering, especially like a couple of the pieces in the show, I'm thinking specifically of the cloak suerte and of the actually the left foot piece, which both seem to have a relationship to Carlos. Whether you want to talk through your relationship to Carlos in some various ways.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. When I was making the cape, I was definitely thinking about Carlos. The cape that he made, I think, is this. It bridged this idea of modernism and a kind of nativist, like kind of the spiritual, shamanistic space. You know, and it's a hard thing like to wrap one's head around, to think about the angular kind of forms of modernism, and then this like organic textures of the kind of like a native sensibility, and then to put those two together, I think is super interesting, and he was doing that over and over again. As a mentor, he was the first person to ever connect his personal practice with teaching as being singular. And that was, blew my mind, that you can have your practice be inside teaching as a kind of the extension, but not just an extension, like that he was, as an educator and artist, almost as one unit. And that inspires me as somebody who's being both an educator and a teacher. And I'm fairly new at this, new at the tenure track thing, but it's definitely something that I think about. He also was somebody who kind of opened up my mind to being a political person, or thinking in those terms. I took a couple classes with him, and I think 3. And I was in Worlds in Collision that I know you helped build, and it was a space. The class was a space where we artists were encouraged to become kind of socially minded citizens and to engage the public. And so that was the first time I ever thought that there was even that intersection. I got politicized at SFAI, and my work became deeper as a result. I wasn't isolated, part of a community, and continue to be. And it started there.
And I've always assumed it, but I guess specifically to the point at which you sort of giving yourself permission to explore Filipino content, which is not to say your work has ever been just entirely about Filipino identity, but I wonder if you could talk more about that specifically.
Yeah, while in undergrad, there was very few Filipinos at the Art Institute. There was like 6 of us. And then, and Carlos, and he was like, you should talk to Jenifer Wofford of Mail Order Brides. And I was like, they're so cool. He gave me your contact, I think, but I didn't call you because I was so intimidated. And same with Paul Pfeiffer. He was like, you should call up Paul, and I still haven't called him. But we're Facebook friends now.
Paul is very, very famous, and he lives in New York.
And he's goes back and forth between Asia and the U.S. He I don't know if he's put the seed in my mind, but I started a group called Grupo Alibata, and Alibata is a kind of the pre-colonial language or mark making in the Philippines, and he underwrote us and got us our kind of first funds, and then connected us to Bindlesif Studios, and we got to know that group, you know, starting from being a group Walibata, and then so that connection was fostered then. Yeah, we underwrote that group.
So this is something that you had mentioned earlier during your talk. You just kind of very quickly touched upon it, but it actually encompassed everything. Was just the way in which your work sort of weaves in and out of notions of anthropology or linguistics. And there's sort of the way in which you describe that autobiographically, like how much of it's coming out of like the Filipino fatal attraction to plumbing and things like that. But then there's nothing actually. What kind of has made these two ideas of anthropology and linguistics such functional structures for you in your work?
Well, it's a good one. I just took it for granted that the interest was there, and I kind of just did it. I think because I was a slow learner, I never really decided on what I was gonna grow up to be. Like, I just kind of kept going in this art thing because I was, because it was interesting and it was a thing that I was doing as a young graffiti writer. Like, I knew I liked to draw, and I knew I liked to hang out with those guys, and it was a kind of cultural thing that interested me. And as I kind of proceeded to become more serious as an artist, leaving junior college and going to finally like going to the Art Institute, and the world opened up to all of these possibilities of how one becomes an artist. And then that later expanded even further into the idea that you can bring anything that you're interested in into the practice, into the work. And yeah, I think it just became this receptacle for things that I was curious about. You know, so I think, yeah, I got curious about anthropology, got curious about linguistics. And I'm still, it's just so broad. I don't know how to wrap my head around it yet, but it's just like, I just keep bringing things in, and it's this ever expanding receptacle, this elastic kind of bubble in my head that's the art practice. And it changes so much, and I actually even worry that maybe, you know, my work would be more successful if I focused and do one thing and just like did that thing for the rest of my life. I would have products, and, you know, my practice would be commercially viable, and I would probably just jump over the bridge if I, like, it's just not my work. It's, yeah. Anyways, that's a segue. Or,
No, it's not a segue.
No,
I
it's
mean,
like,
I feel like that's hopefully other questions will come up about sort of what keeps you going as an artist. I think what was also flitting across my mind as we were talking about those two things was like, I think maybe I just spaced out for a second, but I was like, we're in a chapel. But I had also written down some things within that, and I was thinking a lot about these ideas of faith that come up in your work in these indirect, but also sometimes very direct ways. That, you know, in the way that your work can be really irreverent and playful, like it's never disrespectful. So, and I think that you do always kind of hold on to this thing that feels like magic, or feels a little holy somehow, while still being kind of ridiculous. I'm wondering though if you can talk specifically, because the show is so infused with a certain kind of magic, whether that's subversive and absurd in many ways. It's also very, very sincere on all these other levels, and I think that there's a really open-heartedness to some of the objects.
yeah, that's a hard one. It's a sensitive one because, you know, I grew up Catholic, but I feel like there was a moment in my life where I felt that Catholicism restricted from all the other beliefs that were possible. I mean, it's like that elasticity that I was talking about with ideas and that receptacle, and how does one include other things that are good? Like, you know, I think overall, like, I want to be a good person and I want to help. But like, how is a Buddhist not good? You know, in the structure, in the control structure of Catholicism, how are these other people who aren't Christian, like, gonna be going to heaven? You know, and so that was kind of like the initial question that like kind of broke the seal. And after that, it was like, you know, how can I? And I've explored, you know, I think taking like world religion courses and looking at like Taoism and looking at Buddhism and looking at all these other religions as being interesting spiritual places to explore. That's just like the art practice. I never really came to a conclusion. So I don't know, and I'm okay like not knowing. I don't know if there's a God. I don't know if there's a devil. It's not for me to make that decision. And so I'm still curious about it. But there are other ways to be spiritual, and there are other ways that things are empowered, and things are powerful, and things are, there's magic. I want to, where is the place of the capre? Where is the place of the manananggal, these folklorish, like, monsters? Where does aswang? Where do those kinds of spirits live in this spectrum? And does my belief system exclude them? So, in order to become inclusive, I can't put like a container that's knowable yet to me. So I'm just open to it, and all, yeah. That's it. That's kind of, and I'm curious about it, so it keeps appearing in the work. It keeps that curiosity, and I know that some of the pointed things that I speak about in terms of the political stuff that the Catholic Church has done historically have been terrible. The Crusades, you know, I mean, just to go big, you know, it's and oppressions like here, like Native Americans here, like were worked. So history of power and abuse of power is part of that dialogue.
Trying to think which question I want to ask next.
Uh-oh.
I guess the other thing that I just, I basically just wrote down random words on a sheet of paper here and figured
Word
out
association.
the question wrong. But one of the words I wrote down in relation to the work in the Thatcher was volatility. And I thought walking in and seeing all those bats and seeing them covered with matches, and then walking towards the back and seeing these brick-like forms that to me look like ice cream sandwiches, but maybe that's because I'm always hungry. But there's also this gas can in there, and you basically set up like a pyromaniac scream in the Thatcher there. And I'm wondering if that's something you want to talk about?
Again, I didn't make that connection. Thanks. Yeah, I think it's because of the times. I'm frustrated and feel powerless, and that's actually where this show is stemming from. It's like I need a place of empowerment. I need to feel and to be able to share a space of safety and protection, or revolt. How do we undo the things that are happening right now? So I think it's manifesting itself in those things. I got a recent text from a friend over there. How do you unfuck things? It's like, that wasn't the exact quote, but how do you undo all this stuff? I'm speechless in a way, and that there's a little piece I didn't talk about that's in a little case that has a doily in the back that looks like an explosion, and that is one of those bricks with a wick on it that's intended to be filled with gas and used as a Molotov cocktail. And the Molotov cocktail is something that I actually held one when I was in Bahrain at a residency that was unexploded. It was thrown. It was probably from 2011 during the Arab Spring, but it wasn't exploded. But it fell into a Bronze Era burial ground, a burial mound that had been stolen, like excavated, but thieves looted. Yeah, come on, guys. Yeah, that had been looted, and it just happened to fall in there, and it didn't explode, so it probably just burnt out. So I think about that object. I held it, and I had it as part of my show. I wanted to bring it home with me, but customs would probably make it difficult. So I just left it there. But I think that's something that that's revisiting me, that the Arab Spring revolt, the object and how it was covered in soot, and it still had, they used, instead of cloth, they used, what's a scrub, the thing you clean pots and pans with. Yeah, it's kind of like metal. It's
Steel wool.
Or steel wool. Thanks. What else? So yeah, I feel powerless right now, as probably many of you guys feel because of the Trump administration. The way that things are. I just feel like we're under attack in so many different from so many different places that my head's spinning and I can't make sense of it.
I'm just going to ask Mike one last thing, and it's time for audience Q&A. And I guess it really relates to what we were just talking about, which is I think that most creatives at some point or another have a crisis. And I'm just wondering what keeps you going, like when you've had a really low spot as an artist. And this is a really broad question. It's not very specific to this exhibition, but I do think it's an important thing, especially for young artists to think about, because everybody's going to hit a wall, folks. You're going to slide down the wall or keep going. It's the question. So Mike keeps somehow going, and I want to know why.
I slide down the wall and crawl under it. I don't know. I think it's I'm inertia. I love what I do, and those walls. It's true. You will hit a wall if you haven't already. There are many of them, and it's definitely something that like you kind of. I think the way that I've handled it in the past, and even recently, is to just busy myself. So find other triggers or directions. I like crafting something, like learning a new, I don't know what to do. I'm gonna learn about ceramics. I don't know what to do. I'm gonna crochet something, and so you kind of build up things. You build up your skill base while trying to figure out what else you do. I was at a big wall when I developed the Nasarima project. I really felt stuck and like sliding down the wall. Like I don't know what to do. What am I as an artist? I keep repeating myself. Why? I don't want to I don't want to make boring work. I don't want. It feels forced. Like all of these things. It feels contrived. Feel cliche. And then a colleague who was also temporary. I was at that time in Richmond, Virginia. He was like, "Hey, let's make a boat." And I was like, "I could do that. Let's make a boat." And then so what kind of boat? And then that was like, I'm gonna make a bangka and sail it on the James River. And the James River is like the American river. That's where the first American is in Western American. That's the first British colony was set in the James River. What better way to reverse this colonial dialogue than to put a bangka on the James River? So that was 3 years of work.
Can you explain to folks what a bangka is?
A bangka is a Pacific outrigger canoe. It has an outrigger, at least one, and it's a ubiquitous type of boat in the Pacific. Hawaiians, all the islanders use it. Sometimes it's called a wonka, depending on where you are. But yeah.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you. Questions?
I want to be Phil Donahue and pass the microphone around.
Or you just scream it. Or you just...
I'm not good at asking questions, but I was writing notes as you were talking, and it kind of distilled down to 3 things. And you can answer this or respond to it in any way. 1, we are vessels of complex emotions. So I picked up on your use of vessels for different things, to hold things. 2, incendiary feelings are within us as a result of pent-up emotions, politics, whatever. And 3, we do something, as you illustrated, to help let these feelings leak out, like make something to relieve anxiety. So the 3 things I'm picking up for you are these: that there are vessels of emotions, that there are feelings of incendiary nature that we need to deal with, and you said that you can do that by crafting, doing something.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I think making is a powerful thing. To be a maker is empowering. It removes you from, gives you independence, and it gives one a kind of out of a kind of consumerist system. And it also, like, oddly, to be a maker is revolutionary. Like, you know, it's not revolutionary, it's too hyperbolic, but, you know, it challenges a paradigm that makes you subject to what they have to offer rather than what you can make yourself. And so I think the act of making, even if it was just like a bunch of like quickly crocheted scarves to give to people, is like one way to usurp that system. It's one way to feel good, one way to like kind of participate in another economy, a kind of gift economy, to like share. You know, I wish I had more time for those types of practices. But yeah, I think, I don't know if that is sufficient. But yeah.
No, that was good. You can use making as part of social justice, if you want to say that.
Yeah, totally. She said you can use making as a part of social justice. That's absolutely true. Yeah, and making isn't just about objects, it's also making ideas. To expand that a little bit. There and then there. Do you want this?
Well, I want to thank you for everything you said, and it's been a really interesting conversation. And I was just thinking about, you know, your work and how it might translate to people in this country. But I was wondering if you've ever shown it in the Philippines, and if so, what the response was there. And if you have not, would you like to have it shown there?
Yeah. Should I wait for the mic?
We'll probably just have to keep the microphone up here. I realize
Yeah.
this. I didn't think this through.
Well, I'm the one that gave it to. Yeah, I've shown once in the Philippines, and it was because of Jenifer Wofford here. She curated a show called Manila Galleon Trade, and invited a bunch of us artists from Northern and Southern California, and other cultural producers, writers, and we kind of descended in Manila and showed work in 3 different venues simultaneously. Yeah, I didn't know what I was gonna make then. So I brought along with me, hot glue gun, and I was just gonna figure it out. And when I got there, the thing that was present and the thing that was interesting that I couldn't do here was to use marijuana. And so there it was prevalent and it was easy. Now it's legal here, so yeah. So I was able to order a brick from a place, and I used that to make work. I made an island, and that was the work that I did. And it wasn't because I wanted to smoke or whatever. It was really about how the legal system would in both places were different, and how that the duality of a thing that was like essentially natural and the thing that was kind of growing everywhere was illegal. Like life as email was something that was interesting. Yeah, so in terms of this work there, I'm totally open to it. I think it would be fun, interesting, and wonderful. But yeah, it's a different dynamic too. But Jenifer would be able to speak about that because you were just there. Do you want to say a couple of words?
That's for another. You can ask me later. I'll keep the focus on you. Just trying to
Hey.
I have a question, and this is something that I talk about with a lot of Phil-Am authors, but I don't know what kind of conversation you folks have in the visual installation art scene. What are your thoughts on the accessibility of your work to larger groups of Phil-Ams? Like, how are they able to, and if they do get exposure to it, what are those kinds of conversations and interactions like?
Yeah, funny, because I asked the same question to my students about legibility
Did everybody
and
hear the
opacity.
question in the back?
Did you guys hear it? I hear nods from back there. So, yeah, I asked the same question about legibility and opacity in the work, and actually this specific class that's here is going to be doing work that is going to hopefully be on the opaque side and be completely unlegible. And what would that look like in that spectrum? And it's a hard thing to negotiate because you do want to be understood, but at the same time you want to push the kind of the end of the spectrum that is interesting and new and innovative and different. And so I don't have an exact answer for that. I kind of do make work on a piece-by-piece basis. There are inside jokes in the work that's in the Thatcher. And I know that those inside jokes aren't going to be legible to a lot of people unless like you spoke Tagalog or you know what the dualities of a certain thing is. And I think that's okay. It leaves space for the viewer to learn more and go deeper. I think about work as something that unfolds, and I think of a work that has an entry point or multiple entry points, and once you go in, there's many other doors to open and to explore. And I think those pieces, whether you resolve it in your own mind there, or you sit around next week, you giggle, like that actually is one of my favorite things. Is like you see this thing and it haunts you. Not you don't think it's haunting you, but you later on you realize that there's this thing that's affected you, kind of like that Molotov cocktail that I found in Bahrain. Like that thing still haunts me because it's such a powerful object. So I hope that there's a thing like that later opens up for the person who doesn't quite understand at the time.
I think the last
To
question,
France.
yeah, will be for
Last
France,
question
and then-
for France.
And then we'll do
To
questions.
ask you about your process, Mike.
Reception.
Do you start with an idea like bato or and then look for objects to make it, or do you look at an object and say this reminds me of X or Y? And the second part of that question is there seems to be a casualness to your assemblages, and are they different objects from different sculptures that you use like words and assemble different statements from them, and then they go back to where they used to be?
Yeah. Yeah, yes. I don't have a single method. I have methods that I rely on or reuse, different strategies, whether it's a conceptual strategy or a material methodology or method. Yeah, I think kind of like the walkthrough, it's kind of, there's a improvisational component that happens in the studio, and it happens when I'm walking around, it happens when I'm talking to people. There isn't this kind of zap of inspiration. Sometimes there's that when I wake up and giggle or whatever, but it's playing. Like you said, like there's a language, like I think about it too in terms of language. Like there are definite parallels between how I think about how words can just be connected and how objects can be connected, and in the same way, like they have meanings, and when you connect one meaning with another thing, they become something, a tertiary thing, or whatever, depending on how complicated the thing is. But yeah, I don't have a specific methodology. Sometimes it's a pun that opens it up. Sometimes it's a material. Sometimes it's an object, like the chandelier. It's just chance. It's just being another mentor. Paul Koss says to be in shape as an artist. One has to be in shape or alert, and you can take advantage of happenstance. Happenchance? That's a new one. And when something comes up, like that word, you can just grab it and use it to help the practice. I don't know. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I think we are done. We should go celebrate Mike at the reception. Thank you, Gloria. Thank you, Eva, again for
you, guys.
hosting all of this and organizing it. And we'll see you over at the lecture.